Everybody that's still standing, and doesn't look very many people still standing, so glad you're all here on this stormy day. And welcome to the 51st CWA AGM. Very many people still standing, so thank you to everyone that made it, and welcome to those viewing online this afternoon. CWA AGM. I'm Chris Lees, President, Canadian Western Aggravation, and welcome to those viewing online this afternoon. Unprecedentedly, I was your president for 3 years. President, Canadian Western Aggravation. But this is the first time that I've ever stood up here and conducted an AGM. It's always been online back in the office. So certainly glad you're here. Wish the day was better. Wish the crowd was bigger, but we've got a good crowd here as it is. So awesome. Thank you for being here. I'd like to introduce a few people. I'll introduce the executive first. We have Michael Latimer. Would you please stand? Levi Jackson, Curtis Kahinka, Kim McLean is our vice president, and Bruce Holmquist, our past president. Kim Hextall. Kim, I keep doing that. Did it yesterday as well. Levi, Curtis, and Michael are our three executive at large. Elected directors that we have. Kelsey Ashworth, not here today. She lives down by Estevan. Told me a couple hours ago they got a foot of snow in their yard at the moment. Marty Cradleville, he's here with us today. Kim McLean. Courtney McDougall. Garth Newell comes from the southeast, Carlisle. He's not here as well today because of the storm. Allie Pike. Carol Poole. Stephen Scott. And last but not least, and our oldest member on our board, Barry Young. Barry's not here with us today as well. I've talked to him an hour ago. He gives his condolences that he wasn't able to be here. Actually, his bull sale and female sale was yesterday. But his wife, Marge, had taken a fall, and she's in the hospital right at this moment at the Pasqua, downtown Regina, and that's where Barry is with her this morning. He said she didn't have a very good morning, so he said if he could bow out this afternoon, he certainly would appreciate it. Our appointed directors with the city are Lori Bresciani, Diana Hollerich, Dana LaJoy, and Grant Shalenko. Our past presidents, we have a number of them here with us today, and I'd like you for sure to stand and remain standing until I get you all introduced, and if I miss one of you, jump up and say, hey, what about me? First off, Dale Strudwick, Brian Hadlin, Stuart Stone, Bill Awley, Bruce Holmquist, Gordon Stevenson, and in an hour and a half, me. I'd like to give those six a hand. Just like to thank all the directors, the past presidents and staff, and the many volunteers for all your contributions throughout the years, the 50 years, moving on to the 51st year, and certainly of all the work that it gets done just to put this event on. Also like to thank Halter Media, who is with us here today, and for the webcast and the live stream services. We're going to have, rather than dealing with a resolution committee, we've kind of changed the name of that, and anybody that has any recommendations for the board, if they want to make a recommendation to the board, please write them out, and Kim Hextall will receive them and present them as is. Our parliamentarian today will be Bill Gray, a past board member. And other than that, I think we're going to take a little bit of time because the folks that are online are able to vote as well So once you've cast your ballots and what have you, and we'll count them, but I'm going to have to wait for the main signal over here from Melissa that tells me everybody online is in and voted. So it may take a few minutes longer, but it won't take long. At this point, I'm going to introduce our CEO, Chris Lane. Most of you know or have heard by now that Chris is going to change positions and jobs. And we certainly appreciate the fact that he was here for the past 6 years. I remember the day we hired him. It was July the 4th. And he's been here 6 years for that. I remember the day we hired him, and some of the board members here were part of that selecting committee. He came in with funny shoes and pink laces in his shoes, and once the contract was signed, we told him he could never wear them again. And we've turned him into a cowboy. He's got a hat and boots, and he tells me his new job, that's what he's wearing. And I'm going to take his word for it, but I also know where his new office is, and I'm going to check up on him, believe me. The other thing, and Chris should tell this story, but I want to tell it a little bit. The day we did the interview, we were in a private hotel, and anyway, I needed to take a bathroom break, and interview with somebody was over. I don't know who it was, and I went into the bathroom, and there was another fella in there. It was the fella that had them funny shoes and them colored laces. And he looked at me because I had my hat on and my boots on. He said, "Hi." Yeah. He said, "I think we're going to meet in a couple of minutes together." I looked him up and down and I said, "Really?" Smartest move we ever made is me being on the board. I know that. He did an absolutely fantastic job. Chris, I'm not telling any more stories until maybe, my next go around or tonight, but if you would come up and take over for a little bit.
That's quite an intro. Thanks, everybody. As our president, Chris Lee, said, my name is Chris Lane. I'm the CEO here at Aggravation. It has been really an honor of my life to be here with this organization for the past almost 6 years, as Chris had mentioned. And the laces were blue, not pink. But trust me, I learned my lesson on that. I have a couple of housekeeping things to get through here just before we call the meeting officially to order. For those of you online, you will be voting using the Election Buddy platform. If you've joined us before in the past 2 years for our virtual AGMs, that's the same platform. The way it will work is you will receive an email with a link in it right away here upon the first vote, which should be to approve the agenda coming up. From then on, that link will open a browser, and every time there's a vote, you will get a new notification to vote via that browser. We will tabulate your votes as you make them, and we'll compile them with the physical votes being done here in the room, and then we'll tabulate everything together and move through the agenda and the director elections that way. So any questions on that? We do have someone manning that system for us. It's Melissa Fuchs. You can reach Melissa by email if you run into any problems with the Election Buddy program at mfuchs@aggravation.com. The other thing we want to do here just before we get rolling is, as Chris mentioned, there is director elections here today, but it is a big one because it is the expiration of Chris's term as president, which means that we also have a past president that will be moving off of the executive and into the past presidents club, as you saw so many of them here today. So Chris, I'm just going to bring you up if you've got something here to come up with you, and I'd actually call on Bruce Holmquist to come up to the stage for a minute before we get rolling. A bit of a thank you. Bruce was on that board that hired the skinny guy from CBC to come run Aggravation. I actually think Stuart Stone was the president at that time, so he bears most of the blame for what's happened in the 6 years since. But honestly, between Stuart and Bruce and Chris as presidents that I've had the pleasure to serve under, it has been an education, it has been an honor, and it has been a lot of fun. So I'd like to count you all as friends, and on behalf of Aggravation, thank you for your time on the board, Bruce. Thank you for your time on the executive, and thanks for showing us all the ropes here. So. Bruce has never turned down a microphone, so he's going to say something here.
I've raised lots of mics, though. Yeah, I'm glad you corrected the pink lace story there. Yeah, they were a blue. I'll vouch for that. Yeah, yeah. It's been a really rewarding experience being involved in the Aggravation board. We've had a lot of things we've dealt with, a lot of successes in buildings and different things. But I guess the thing that we relate to is the friendships and the people we've met and the relationships that we'll carry forward. So anyways, that's one of the shortest ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Bruce. Well, Bruce is taller, but Chris isn't. He never moved the microphone. With that, we'll call the meeting to order. The first order of business to approve today's agenda. Voting members will vote by a show of hands with their voting card or what have you. And the rest of you, open your election buddy link and cast your vote on the motion to approve the agenda. So the first thing I'm going to ask for is an approval of the agenda. Bill Awley, seconder. Marty Cradleville. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Yes. Got to wait for Melissa a little bit. This is where we need Levi to tell a joke, but his jokes are too long because then we lose track of where we are. Corey, you told me this was going to take 30 seconds. And the verdict is in, carried. With that, you have the minutes from the 50th annual meeting in front of you. I would like to vote on or have a motion to accept the minutes from the 50th annual meeting. If someone would make that motion. Kim Hextall. Seconder. Courtney McDougall. All in favor in the audience? Thank you. Voting is in progress online. How's it going, Melissa? Motion is carried. Thank you. So, moving on to the President's message. Of course, each and every one of you that's here do know it was a very challenging year for CWA and every private sector there is, and all of Saskatchewan, all of Canada and the world. And certainly, hopefully, we can start putting those things behind us and what have you. Certainly, everyone was affected by COVID-19, and our organization faced as many challenges as anybody else. We were so fortunate and able to be able to put our show on, our 50th show on. And, you know, I've said over the last couple of weeks, and certainly since Chris's resignation, that the board, the current board that we have today, has probably got the two hardest decisions they've ever made in their life. That was to cancel the show. And the second thing was to say last spring, a year ago now, we're going to have a show until they tell us we can't. And I don't know how many meetings we had, but it was almost daily for a while. Once late summer and fall came, the phone call would come from Chris, and we'd put together a conference call with the executive or the board, and yep, this is how it's going. And the next morning, a phone call would come from Chris and say, nope, rules changed. Got to get everybody back together and go at it again. And I think in October, I think we had like 7 meetings. But as it turned out, it was almost like, it was almost like the vaccinations or everything else that happened in the world. We ended up being 25% down in our entries and 25% down in our gate people, or a little more, and 25% down on our income and profit, and that was just kind of the figure that where we were. But the 50th show might have been the best show in 50 years. The people that were there never once complained or asked why this isn't being done or asked why that wasn't being done. If you told them the law was coming in and you better get your mask on, that's exactly what they did. They just, whatever needed to be done, they did. When you walked down the aisles, when you went into the trade center, there was nothing but happy people, and it was, hey, John, gosh, I haven't seen you in a year and a half. How's it going? And that's just the way it went. And half the time, they weren't even looking at cattle or trade show stuff. It was a visit. And when they all walked home, they said, see you next year. Thanks for getting it together. The staff over the last 2 years have done nothing but been amazing. They first thing they did was, they thought outside the box. That was for 2020, where we had some virtual things. We had some educational programs. We did have the commercial sale in Moose Jaw. They put some things together that just kept Agribition's brand out there and present. And to get the 21 show, which was the 50th show, up and running, I know that man there never slept. He went to bed thinking Aggravation. He got up thinking Aggravation. He tells me he's going to think Aggravation next week when he's in a different position. And I know he will, because there's been there's been endless times where he's told me this is the best job in the world. The business that was at Aggravation in the 50th thrived. We set records in 3 of the different sales for high averages. Amazing. We're in a drought. There's no feed, but we still set some records. That's an attribute to agriculture in general, agriculture in Saskatchewan, agriculture in Canada, and the board, the staff, and the volunteers that put Aggravation together. That's an attribute to all the past presidents. They made this thing happen. All we did was try and keep it together for a year and a half or 2 years of COVID. And, next year is going to be bigger and better. We think it's going to come back right to where it was. Hopefully we can grow up on it still and more. The staff on the board, of course the board's going to change a little bit today, which is fine. I mean, change is always good if it's for the right reasons. Change is never good if it's just because you think you need to make a change. But when you're doing it for the right reasons, it's perfect. And as I say today, the board is going to change a little bit. A few months from now, our CEO is going to change a little bit. It's just the way things work. But as I say, change for the right reasons is good, and we've got the right reasons in front of us today. This is the first AGM in person that I've run. It's going to be the last AGM. We will have a new president, we will have a new vice president, and we certainly will have at least one new executive member at large. We're going to have an election today for our board. We have 6 openings. There's 7 candidates that are running. All positive things, all good things. It keeps everybody on their toes, and it's going to make Aggravation better. I think that's about it for my report. Chris, if you want to come up and take over again for a bit, that'd be great.
Thanks, Mr. President, and thank you everyone again. One of the things that I've learned in my time here is that no matter which president I'm working under as CEO, I have no idea what they're going to say when they get in front of a live microphone. And it's something I've learned just to roll with, but they've all done an excellent job of stewarding the organization, and they're a hard act to follow. So my job here right now is to run you through a few slides that really review the state of the business, the work we did in the past year, and the results of the show. So you do have plenty of documentation in the annual report that will support what I'm going to talk about right here, so feel free to follow along. Obviously, you know, as Chris had mentioned, it was not an easy year for Aggravation, but it was a very important year for Aggravation. There's many ways to measure success and failure, I think, in our business, and even though the numbers aren't where we are used to seeing them or where we'd like them to be, we're pretty sure that nobody would have a do-over and do anything different with our 50th show. And as we get through this, you know, I think it's really important to know that at the board level and at the staff level, while we had to plan and unplan and replan several times based on what was happening with COVID, there was never any doubt that no matter what, we were going to do a show. The viability of Aggravation as an event and as a marketplace depended on our ability to show up. Because as much as we like to think that we are unassailable as a business and a marketplace, it became really apparent that to go 2 years without a show and to bring people together was going to be a huge risk. So whatever our loss is this year, it would have been significantly more had we not done an Aggravation. So I get asked about this all the time around how did we decide to go ahead in the middle of all that? And really it's a simple answer, is we didn't have a choice. We were going to do this show one way or the other. Our community needed it, the industry needed it, and Aggravation as a business needed it. So that's what we're going to talk about a bit today. Carly's going to run slides for me. We do a couple different ways that we keep track of how we do at Aggravation. So we're going to go through a couple stats here. As Chris might have mentioned, or you might have seen in the news, 85,000 visitors to Aggravation over 6 days last year. Now that is about 30% down from what we're used to seeing. So part of that is a COVID effect, I think, on both sides. We saw people you know, not shy in phoning us and telling us that as long as we were going to have to do vaccinations, they weren't coming. So those people stayed home. And then I think there was a bit of a COVID effect on the other side too, where not everybody in the community was confident about being in a large group of people at that time yet. You have to remember at that stage in the fall, we were absolutely the largest indoor event that anything really in Western Canada had seen in the past 18 months. So we also had no school kids here physically at the show. That obviously takes about 10 to 12,000 people right off the attendance roll right off the bat. So that's where we landed on that. On the school kids thing, though, I think one of the victories that we've been able to log over the last 18 months has been the creation and adoption of a virtual or an online education program. We managed to reach, during that show week, 8,000 kids virtually. We had a great team on that education committee, and through staff and helpers be able to create unique live online content that was accessible for anybody, really, to log on and view and take part in Aggravation, even though if the schools weren't allowed to be here. And I think it was so successful that we're going to keep doing it. One of the greatest advantages of being able to evolve that because we had to is that Aggrabation's ability to reach kids now is not limited by geography. You don't have to be within a school bus ride to come to Aggravation and experience it. You can be from anywhere in the province or really anywhere in the country and access it. And that's exactly what happened. We had kids from all over the province and some in Alberta access Aggrabation's education program this last year. We had, one of the, you see up there 21,000 rodeo fans, and that is one area that actually didn't see that much of a drop through COVID. The people who bought a ticket to come and have a night of entertainment and see the rodeo, that's almost as strong as where we left it in 2019. Almost, not enough of a difference to really speak of. So we had sellouts on Wednesday and Saturday night, and Friday was certainly strong as well, as strong as we've been used to seeing it, that's for sure. And 200 volunteers showed up to help us with showtime this year. Again, a bit of a drop from what we're used to, but having said that, I think that is directly in line with the COVID effect we saw as well. Our economic impact is, it's hard to measure in a year where there's so many external influences in COVID. I think in a normal year, we do over 70 million for the province and over 40 million for the city. My guess is that if there's 25% less people around, that's probably a fair math to extrapolate. But regardless, it's in the tens of millions of dollars, and I can tell you from personal experience and anecdotes that the hoteliers and the restaurateurs in the city were overjoyed and overwhelmed to be able to turn their businesses back on to host Aggravation. They hadn't seen anything like it in 18 months. And I think if anybody needs a reminder or to underscore the value of this event in this community, without an exaggeration, I think we help some of those businesses actually survive to get to the point where restrictions are open and they're thriving again. A couple other stats that we like to keep track of here is just how we're growing our digital footprint and how we're growing our media footprint. Are people talking about us? How are they talking about us? And where are they talking about us? Our digital footprint, our reach, and our influence is on a hockey stick growth curve. And I think part of that is in the last 18 months, we had to get very creative about how we accessed our partners and the people who come to us normally in person. And so what we're seeing here is a benefit of a coordinated and deliberate strategy to be active and to be more invitational for people to activate with us online. And by the time you coupled that with an actual in-person show, we saw some significant upticks in our digital footprint. You can see the stats here. I won't go through them all, but I think it does show that when you meet your audience where they are, they respond pretty well. And it also underscores the importance of Aggravation to be a year-round part of these people's lives. We have multiple year-round programs now, whether that's mentorship or virtual education program. Aggravation, thanks to this coordinated effort in the digital sphere, is certainly more than a 6-day show in November for a lot of people, and these are the statistics that show that. Okay, let's talk some numbers here. So this is a comparative bar graph. It's the most simplified way that I can explain and go through all of the numbers that you see in your annual report, and which Christy from MNP will go over in much more detail because she's the auditor and the expert, and I'm just the bar graph guy. So you see here in 2021, we'll work backwards from that. That is obviously the last show. Generally, we like to see the green bar higher than the red bar. That's not what happened in the last 2 years, thanks to COVID. But you can see specifically when you compare those 2 years, 2020 and 2021, how important it is for this organization to put on a show. In 2020, we didn't have that opportunity. All of the revenue we earned in 2020 was either through emergency wage subsidy or inventing new programs virtually so that we could keep our partners activated with us, our sponsors. You can see in 2021, in the middle of two waves of COVID, Omicron was low and Delta was just coming, or sorry, the other way around, Delta was ending and Omicron was just coming. We still managed to generate over $4 million in revenue, which is a massive economic indicator for us that the business model is still set to work, given the chance to work. So coupled with that, expenses of $4.5 million, our anniversary shows are always expensive shows. We earmarked and deliberately decided we were not going to pull a lot of punches when it came time to celebrate 50 years. So there were some extra expenses that we earmarked for that 50th anniversary that we wanted to make sure it didn't feel like it was half an Aggravation because of COVID, or didn't feel like we weren't ready to celebrate. That was a very deliberate decision. We knew going into that show that it was going to be hard to turn a profit, and it proved to be. But that was a decision that we made collectively, that the 50th show was important enough, and it was even more important where we were on the COVID timeline to be a bit of a beacon and a bit of a first step, and be a leader in the return to live events. You can see, though, that those previous 3 years, and I would say probably 5 to 6 to 7 years before that, also were all profitable years. So that's how we are able to be in the financial position we are, as if you look in your annual report, is that even though we sustained 2 years of losses thanks to COVID, we are still in a financial position. We are solvent, we have no operating debt, and we are able to absorb the losses that we've taken in a way that allows Aggravation to continue to function and continue to plan the next shows without really skipping a beat. The sum total of this, as you'll see in your report, is a net operating loss this year of $321,000. So how did we earn it? We break it down into a number of different categories about where the revenue comes from for CWA. Even though the numbers are different and less than probably they would have obviously been not having COVID, their share of the revenue pie is about the same. So you can see sponsorship is just over $1 million. That's continually and predictably $1 million revenue line for Aggravation. Show, that encompasses tickets and admissions, so all the revenues we get from rodeo tickets and people who come to the gate. That is normally just under $1 million for us. Didn't quite reach that this year, obviously. Displays at $750,000, that's the trade show, that's the booth space that people buy. That is also traditionally at or just over $1 million revenue line for Aggravation. And when we talk about probably the part of the revenue model that took the hardest hit around COVID, it was likely in the trade show display space, because the people in the trade show were fighting two things. They were fighting a shortage of staff. Well, actually, they were fighting three things. As we all know, that staffing is a problem through COVID. They were fighting production and supply chain issues, so that even if they did come here, they didn't really have anything to put in their booth necessarily through COVID. And then some of them were battling against corporate policies around, that was really shifting at that time, whether or not large corporations were allowing their people to be at large events. Some were, and others weren't. So participation in the trade show was probably down more like 35%. You see our livestock revenue number at about $400,000. That's a little bit less than it normally is. We like to see about between $475,000 and $500,000 in revenue in livestock, simply just a lower number of entries. Although offset somewhat by a much larger number in grants. So these are all the COVID support programs that we were able to qualify for through this, and some new programs as well to help businesses restart after COVID. Other and funding programs, those kind of make up the last $500,000 in our revenue line, and they are everything from the interest we earn with our money in the bank to the sales of hoodies and sweaters, as well as the government funding programs that we're lucky enough to have and maintain through COVID around international market development, Indigenous agriculture engagement, and a couple others as well. On the expense side of things, you can see that the bulk of what Aggravation spends is on labor and benefits, and that's not just us as a staff, but that's all of the people that we bring onto payroll to be able to put on the show. Like I said, we didn't cut a heck of a lot back on our ability to put on the show, So by the time that was said and done, Aggravation has around 120 people on payroll that we pay through the fall. Buildings and equipment, this is the largest portion of this is what we pay to Real to be able to host our event on the facilities here. But also it's equipment rentals. And this was a higher cost than normal for us because thanks to COVID again, and normally in some of our sponsor agreements, they contribute equipment for us to use, but thanks to supply chain issues and sale crunches, very few of that equipment came through. So we had to go to the open market and just rent it. So that's why that particular bucket is higher than normal. Our show expenses, this is everything from bedding, feed, and dirt, and prize money to put on the show, marketing, communications, entertainment. All of that's a little bit higher again because we added, that's where you'll see most of the additions on expenses around the 50th. So whether or not we brought people like Amber Marshall, we made a limited edition belt buckle, we had a clothing line, all those kind of things that help celebrate any time you saw the 50th being elevated, that's where those expenses would show up. The rest of them are pretty standard. Administration, amortization, board staff and volunteers, that's the events like this that we run. And then our international sliver on the bottom there, that's the payments that we make in partnership with the provincial government to the buyers that come to Aggravation and are incented to be here to invest in what we're doing here at Aggravation. That's the financial picture. So like I said, a net loss of $321,593, if I have that memorized correctly. So obviously we've said it before, but no loss is an easy one in the nonprofit space, but we feel confident that that not doing the show would have been considerably more expensive, and we are equally confident that we are set up for success in the future, and we are able to absorb and roll with the ups and downs of the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years here in a way that allows Aggravation to continue to plan for what it does best. A couple other things, though, I wanted to notice just outside of the money here. There were lots of highlights around the 50th that I think bear talking about a little bit and celebrating. This was a milestone year for us in our partnership with STARS for a couple reasons. One, we raised more money this show than we have ever before for STARS, at just under $100,000. And when you look back at the size of the checks that come from Aggravation that they hang on their walls over the years, I think we started out with a few $1,000s, and now through that partnership and through some creativity and fundraising, we're knocking on the doors of 6 figures. And that is important of itself. But a few weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago, we got an email from STARS that says, well, you've actually crossed a fairly significant milestone in fundraising cumulatively for STARS. So for the first time ever, a nonprofit like us is going to get a logo on the new Saskatchewan helicopter. So every time that helicopter flies, Aggravation will be flying with it. And I think we can all take a little bit of pride in that. That's a really unique accomplishment to have. So we'll have a, yeah, thanks. I think that accomplishment belongs to just about everybody that comes to Aggravation. Anybody who buys a 50-50 ticket at the rodeo or a silent auction, however we do it, I think everybody owns a bit of that. And we'll have an official sort of ceremony around that, I'm hoping, at the show to be able to see that and show it off to everybody. The second thing we did, and Kim Hextall will talk about this a little bit later as chair of the Scholarship Foundation, but this was a big year for CWA in the fact that we made some significant moves administratively to not only administer a scholarship program, but spin it off into its own entity so that it has its own board of directors, some of them are here today, and can continue to do the good work in funding post-secondary education for folks in our community looking to grow their careers in agriculture. There's a lot more to say about this, but one of the coolest things we did, and we tied it in with the 50th, is we actually gave away that 1971 pickup truck deckled in Aggravation. We raffled the tickets off. Not only did the truck pay for itself, but it put a little bit of dollars back into the scholarship fund, which for the first time in some years is now not just drawing down on its own resources, but now we've got a system here where we can put money back into the scholarship fund, grow it, and the scholarship board has the ability to decide which ways they want to do that. And as long as it's growing, it has the opportunity to talk about other things it can do with the funds that we have now set it up to go out and fundraise for itself. So that's another exciting thing. That guy's Bernard Deese. He's the guy who won the truck. And he came to pick it up right after the show. It was in December. And that guy drove that truck like 300 miles home on icy highways. And I was just waiting for the phone call that he put it into the ditch on the way. But he didn't. He's an older guy. He knew how to drive that thing all the way home. So congratulations to him. I was a bit sad to see it go because I kind of enjoyed driving that around for 6 months thinking it could be mine, but it wasn't. And really just to wrap things up here, President Chris introduced and named our directors. That's our board of directors. They're a good-looking group of people, but they're also really smart. And it is not an exaggeration or a stretch to say that we wouldn't be where we are talking about the continued viability of Aggravation if it wasn't for that group of people. Remember, they're volunteers, not only volunteers of their time, but also of their talent and their expertise. And every one of them contributed to where we are today. And I certainly wouldn't have been here without the help of that board of directors. So I think they all deserve a round of applause too. And one more thing before I go. Next slide. So this is, hang on. My first version of this speech at the AGM, I was so nervous. I had everything laid out. I had every note, how I wanted to say it. I had to make sure everybody got the right, acknowledgement in the right place. And you can see this time, I don't even have any notes. I'm just talking. This is the support. This is what happens when you have such a supportive team around you, and you're able to be so confident in the delivery of the programs and the delivery of the business. And we have that here, not only with the board of directors, but also this staff. So this is the current staff here at Aggravation. This is the team that really buckled down through unprecedented times, and I know we're tired of that word, but got Aggravation through 2020 and through 2021 in the hard work of delivering the programs that we set them out to deliver. And nobody on the board and nobody on that staff signed up for the job that they all had to do in the last 2 years. So left to right, Corey Sentes, Finance and Administration Manager, Carly Vorreiter, Marketing and Brand Manager, Melissa Fuchs, Administrations and Programs Associate, Shauna Fuchs, you all know Shauna, Livestock and Rodeo Manager, who actually is not here today. She's feeling unwell. Guy in the cowboy hat in the middle, you know him. Carrie Hackle, Trade Show and Entertainment Manager, Cheyenne Catley, Livestock and Rodeo Associate, Bianca Bernasconi, Bianca Harden, she just got married. Bianca Harden, Partnership, Sponsorship, Interim Manager, and Jesse Kindop, Sponsorship and Partnership Associate. That is a great team of people, and I have to tell one story about them. I'll get there. When COVID was at its worst, all of those people got together and decided, well, I helped them decide, but they decided that that they would, I shouldn't really say this because it's not really a public thing, but I'm done in this job anyway, so I'm going to say it. They all decided that it would be worth it for them all to take less money home for as long as it took, as long as that team got to stay together. Now we did, thank you, we did figure out a way to pay everybody again. But I think that level of dedication really shows that this kind of organization, it really just gets in your blood. It's about more than coming to work, and it's more than a job. And I think we all know it because we're all here today. But I have never worked anywhere like that before, and I'm not sure I'll work anywhere like that again. So thanks to all the staff for getting us through this. Thanks to all the board for your leadership. And thanks for allowing me the opportunity to lead through some of this. I think, I've said this before, when you get the opportunity to lead this organization, you feel like you hold it in your hands. And I don't think you ever really let it go. So I don't intend on doing that. Thanks so much, everybody. That's the report.
Thank you, Chris. I want to make my apologies. In my introductions, of course, I got telling stories about Chris, and everything went blurry on my paper, and I was shooting from the hip. But I am apologize to our MLA from Regina Leuven, Warren Steinley, is here to join us today as well. So sorry about that. Anyway, we will move on. Chris's report, thank you very much for that. We'll move on to the financial report. I would like to call on Christy DePaula to present from Myers Norris Penny to present the audited statements from Canadian Western Aggravation.
Good afternoon. So unlike Chris, I do need my notes. This isn't really my ideal scenario in front of a big crowd, but my responsibility really is just to walk you through the financial statements. The statements start on page 22 of your report, if you did want to follow along. So really, as the external auditors at MNP, our responsibility is to provide an opinion as to whether or not the statements present fairly in all material respects in accordance with the accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. The first couple paragraphs of our auditor's report is a clean, unmodified, or unqualified audit opinion. So really, the statements do indeed present fairly in all material respects in accordance with those accounting standards. Flipping a couple pages, your first statement really is your statement of financial position, or your balance sheet, if you will. So that's a snapshot in time of where the aggravation was at the end of business on January 31st, 2022. And then you've got your 2021 comparative figures. So we kind of get a little bit muddy here because as an auditor, I'm always talking about the fiscal year, but at your guys' AGM, you guys are always talking about the show year. So when I say 2022, I do mean the 2021 show. So looking at the balance sheet, notable changes really is the scholarship fund. So typically you would have the aggravation fund, and then you'd have a scholarship fund, and then you'd have a total. As Chris had mentioned, the scholarship fund did spin off into its own legal separate entity. So that scholarship fund is no longer presented in your 2022 figures, but it does show up in that 2021 comparative amount because it was still part of the aggravation last year. So total assets at the end of the year are down about $365,000. The most significant impact really is the deficit that was incurred in the 2022 fiscal year. The other piece attributed to that decrease is going to be $85,000 that was pulled out of the investment balances and spun off into the scholarship fund. If you flip the next page, you've got your statement of operations, which at the very bottom, as Chris had already highlighted, you've got an operating loss of $321,000. So as we review this year's statement of operations, the figures really are not comparable to what you had last year. The cancellation of the 2020 show is reflected in those 2021 figures. As such, we see significantly reduced revenues and expenses of the association as compared to when we're comparing it to that 2021 year. So from an audit perspective, we compare the 2022 year end, or the 2021 show, to the 2020 year end, or the 2019 show. So we did note some decreases, which Chris had already highlighted, decreases in the sponsorship, the show, display, and livestock revenues, which is largely due to fewer visitors, fewer exhibitors, and fewer cattle entries in this year's show, as we're comparing it to the pre-COVID numbers. There are also some lost sponsorships in that 2021 show when we're looking back at the 2019 sponsors. So those decreased revenues are partially offset by some increased grants, largely attributed to COVID, as well as the 50th show anniversary. And then you've also got an increase in other revenue, which is capturing merchandise sales, interest income, and a new $50,000 contribution from Riel, which is outlined in Note 11 of your financial statements. On the expense side, the majority of expenses are comparable to that 2019 show. You will see some inflationary increases, which does not come as a surprise, as that's the market we're in these days. We're all seeing those increases. These increases are in addition to some increased costs for the 50th anniversary show. So although the current year results do show a loss of $321,000, the 2021 show was a good rebound to the impacts that COVID has had on the Aggravation as well as many organizations throughout the country. The association continues to maintain a very healthy financial position overall, which is highlighted on that balance sheet. Thanks.
Thank you, Christy, and your team at Myers North Penny. We'll now have a motion to approve the auditor's report as presented. I'd so like to move that, and I would ask for a seconder to that motion. Curtis Kahenka. All in favor? And as usual, we're waiting on Melissa. I don't have a timer, but I know it's not 30 seconds. Motion is carried. Thank you. And now I would like to make a motion to approve Myers Norris Penny as the auditors for the 22-23 year. We'll have, is it all in favor for that? Okay, we will wait for Melissa again. Oh, good thing you're keeping me on track here. We need a seconder before we can vote. Stephen. Anybody change your vote? I didn't think so. I see Marty Seymour at the back. I remember working with him for 4 or 5 years. He's doing exactly the same as he did for those 4 or 5 years. We would go for lunch. He'd sit down, sometimes order, sometimes not. Lunch was over, Marty'd come back. He never sat down to eat a meal ever with us over those 4 or 5 years. He was either in the kitchen promoting, or maybe he was drinking in the back by himself. We don't know. And I watched him walk in. I've seen him sit down. Like he's a never sit still guy. That's for sure. Motion is carried. What's that, Marty? Ah, good. At this time, as I told you before, we're not really asking for resolutions. We're asking for recommendations. At this time, does anybody have any recommendations? If they do, they can present them and give them to Kim Hextall throughout the meeting. Any time is fine. We'll keep on moving on. We will now move on to the resolutions we received. There are 6 resolutions being presented today regarding general course of business. I'm going to call on our governance chairman, Grant Shalenko, to present those resolutions. We'll do them one at a time. He'll present them. I'll ask for a seconder. We'll vote, and we'll do that on the resolutions.
Thank you, Chris. So the Constitution of your association allows for the articles of the Constitution to be amended or added by special resolution at an annual general meeting. Chris had asked me to chair the governance committee and go through the Constitution, and we have done that. We have proposed some amendments. The board is supportive of these, and we do want to present those to the membership here today. I do want to acknowledge the other committee members on governance, Dana Lajoie, who's not able to join us today, and Courtney McDougall. To the rest of my fellow directors who so desperately wanted to join this committee, your turn may be coming, and we'll just take a list and put you in order of this exciting, riveting work. So, anyhow, you were circulated on tables earlier for those in attendance at today's meeting, a list of our proposed resolutions. To the members who are joining online, Corey had emailed these out, I'm hoping about 30 days ago. And I'll ask you to refer to those. So open your emails, find that file, and we'll run through these as quickly as we can. To the members who are online who are voting, similar to the advice that I've received when bidding on livestock online, bid quickly, bid early, you'll lose. We're trying to keep this moving along, and there is 6 amendments to go through. So, First Amendment is one that currently does not exist in the Constitution, which provides notice to our members of constitutional amendments. So we are proposing that notice shall be given to the current membership base on record of any constitutional amendments 30 days prior to the scheduled date for the annual general meeting. The rationale for this is it reduces the risk of our membership not being informed about potential constitutional change that could fundamentally affect the association. So with that, Mr. Chair, I move that the membership approve the proposed amendment to provide notice of constitutional changes as presented. We will need a seconder.
Can we have a seconder for that? Carol Poole. Call for the vote. All in
Discussion.
favor?
We should have discussion.
Okay, well, no, it's not carried because we're in voting in progress. I'll have that down pat, Melissa, when we're done. We're good to go? Our governance chairman told me, and I know he's right, before we had that vote, we should have had discussion. Was there any discussion on the resolution? Okay, I told you nobody was gonna say
Okay,
anything.
that's good. Just trying to do my job, Chris. Just trying to do it.
Just a note about the storm, I just got an email from home, they can't see across the yard, that's 100 feet to the road. So it has arrived in the southeast. Carried. Second motion.
Thank you. So, second motion pertains to a potential change in quorum. The current article in our Constitution says quorum is achieved as representation present on behalf of 30 of the members in good standing, which shall constitute quorum at any general meeting of the association. There is a bit of risk of defining a specific number, potentially an apocalyptic April snowstorm that might have affected in-person attendance. The Not-for-Profit Corporations Act recognizes quorum as those members in good standing in attendance at any general meeting of the association. And we think with this hybrid model of in-person and online meeting that there shouldn't be an issue. But instead of, the risk to the association, what happens if there's 29 or 28 members in attendance? Well, we'll have a nice visit and we'll be rescheduling another AGM to do the business of the association. So I move that membership approve the proposed amendment to change quorum at any general meeting of the association as presented. Ask for a seconder. Levi,
Do we have a seconder? Levi,
any discussion?
I got that
it?
this time.
Good, because this one there might.
Any discussion on that? If not, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? Your turn to tell a joke.
You'll be waiting. How about we just age in place?
Wow. Is he still here? Did he walk somewhere? Oh, there he is, hiding back there. How's your shoes, Marty? You got a hat this year? Oh, yeah.
That one's carried. Good.
That motion is carried. We'll go to the third one.
Good to go. Our third amendment is really one of just trying to bring clarity to the description of the board size composition. You know, we tend to stumble through and try to figure out who's up and that. So, you know, just highlighting a few points in the current article. Maximum of 8 directors to be elected at AGMs, each for a 2-year term, but our president and vice president expiring in that current year are deemed to be re-elected, and on and on. So it's really a wording change that we think will bring some clarity to this amendment. So we are proposing that the size of the board of directors shall be set at the February board meeting by the board of directors. Size of the board will be a minimum of 14 and a maximum of 24, and then identify that the board will consist of the president, vice president, and past president, additional directors to be elected at the AGM, each for a 2-year term in accordance with the board size set at the February board meeting, appointed directors as determined by the board of directors, and then we kept the language in terms of protection for the president and vice president. So it's really just a bit of a wording order change that just brings clarity to that section. So I move, Mr. Chair, that membership approve the proposed amendment to clarify the composition of the board of directors as presented.
Can we have a seconder for that? Courtney McDougall. Any discussion? If not, we'll call for the vote. All in favor?
And we wait.
That's number 3.
What's that? That's 3. Halfway done.
So, Marty, because that one shoe looked so good, like, and so colorful and different patterns, is the other shoe the same? Because I do notice some people have 2 different types of socks nowadays. Well, at times it can be, yes.
No, I don't think so.
Just thinking about CEOs, kind of where we're at now. One more word out of you, and I'm going to tell yesterday's story about the glasses.
Good. I think we're good to go.
That motion is carried. Number 4.
Good. Halfway through, folks. Thanks for helping keep this move along. Our fourth amendment, we had a good discussion at the board about something that currently does not exist in the current constitution, and that's term lengths for the president and vice president. So we are proposing that the Constitution be amended to reflect that the president and vice president will be elected to the executive annually to serve to a maximum of 2 years. These terms may be extended for 1 additional year under extenuating circumstance, and any extension must be voted on by the board. So with that, I I move that the membership approve the proposed amendment to establish term limits for the president and vice president as presented.
Can we have a seconder for that motion? Michael Latimer. Any discussion? If not, call for the vote. Thank you. Marty, did you want to say something? Marty, number 2? Thought you'd be quiet. We should actually get Allie up to tell the story about Marty number 2.
We don't need to do that.
Carried.
We're carried. We're good to go. So amendment number 5 is really just an add-on to an existing article in our Constitution. And really all we're suggesting or proposing by way of amendment is that elected members of the Board of Directors must serve or have served for a minimum of 1 term or 2 years on the Board of Directors to be eligible for election to the Executive Committee. The rationale behind this is that somebody purchases a membership 7 days prior to the AGM, potentially could let their name stand for, if they were nominated to the board, and potentially if they had enough support, could be on the executive with never having experienced any sort of board activity for this organization. And we think that would be valuable experience. So with that, I move that membership approve the proposed amendment to establish a minimum service time for board members to serve before being eligible to serve on the executive committee as presented.
And we have a seconder. You have to help me out here. Well, it wasn't Candace, but if Candace voted, that's good. Okay. We'll call for any discussion?
Does that have to be continuous before the election for the executive, or could it be 10 years in the past?
So, and I'll repeat it just so the members online heard. The question is, does it have to be continuous, or could it be somebody had served a term 10 years on the past? We had considered that. We don't want to disadvantage somebody who had previously served on the board and potentially had taken a leave for family purposes or something else. So we did not put a limit around that. It does not require a continuous service to be eligible to be elected to the executive.
Any more discussion? If not, we'll call for the vote. Opposed? The motion is carried. This is the 6th and final.
And really, our Sixth Amendment is one to just bring some clarity to one of the articles of the Constitution, and it reflects to the process to replace a member of the executive. So currently, the wording is, in the event of the death, resignation, or permanent disability of any officers, the vacancy caused thereby shall be filled by the executive committee. The problem being, a resignation of the officers can't be filled by the executive committee, who we're down one anyways, right? So what we're suggesting or proposing appointments to fill vacancies of the officers of the association as presented.
Can we have a seconder for that motion? Ally. Any discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? We'll wait for Melissa. She's getting quicker. Ah, that's good.
Carried.
It's carried. Thank you, Grant.
So we're done. 100%, similar to Bill Olley's statistics mark in university, if you take the other 4 people who were sitting beside him.
I think at this time, we'll maybe take a little break. Got 15 minutes to grab a coffee or a pop or whatever that they're serving back there, and a little bit of lunch. So everybody enjoy a cup of coffee, and 15 minutes, we'll be back up.
Give another 2-minute warning here before we resume with the program. First up will be election of directors. 2 minutes.
Carla, you ready to go? Okay, if everybody wants to take your coffee and take your seats again, we'll get on with the program. Okay, we'll get started with our directors' nominations. We'll move into the election of directors. We have 6 seats open for the 22-23 Board of Directors. We have received 7 nominations for those seats, and so we will have an election. We have verified that all nominations are members in good standing. All applications were received on time and were nominated by members in good standing. Those nominated for election are as follows: Kelsey Ashworth, Levi Jackson, Marty Cradleville, Garth Newell, Ali Pike, Carol Poole, and Mike Sidoric. So at this time, and because of the storm and what's taking place outside in some parts of the country, some of the speeches have been pre-recorded, and we will hear from them. There are 2 or 3 of them that are in attendance here, and we will hear from them in person. Our first one that we're going to have to speak today is Kelsey Ashworth. She's not with us today, but she pre-recorded her speech yesterday. Carly over here will run that speech. Go ahead, Carly.
Hello everyone and good afternoon. I wish I could be with you all in person today, but as we know, the weather had a different plan for us, so I'm happy to be able to join you virtually. My name is Kelsey Ashworth and I am from Ungar, Saskatchewan. My husband Kyle and I have an 11-month-old daughter named Peyton, and we farm and raise purebred Simmental cattle with Kyle's mom and dad. I work for BASF as a Retail Connect campaign manager. In this role, I work with a team of 9 across Western Canada who are responsible for the sales and distribution of our crop protection products and Invigor hybrid canola seed. I'm here today to seek re-election for the Aggravation Board of Directors, and if successful, this would mark my 3rd term as a director. Over my time as a board member, I've had the opportunity to work with the 4-H and Youth File, Grain Expo event, as well as serve on the audit committee. However, I have been involved with the show from a very young age. I can remember coming to watch the commercial cattle show and sale with my dad. I went through the 4-H and Youth program as a judging competitor. I joined the 4-H committee as a volunteer following university. And of course, the last few years as a director, and our farm is an exhibitor. Being a part of the board has been a fantastic learning opportunity. As young people in agriculture, we have endless opportunities of ways to get involved and to learn from our peers throughout the industry. So I'm pretty fortunate that Aggravation is where I get to spend a portion of my time. This learning opportunity has allowed me to gain a greater understanding into the show itself, everything that must work together and to come put on a show, but also to make it a success. All of the stakeholders that play such an important role and also rely on the show in their own businesses. So aside from the show itself, but working with committees to bring forward new ideas and improve events to make sure that they're a continued success, but also working with fellow board members, learning about board governance, financials, and the audit process has been beneficial as a board member, but also in my personal and professional life. So should I be able to continue on the board in the next few years, goals of mine would be to work with a variety of different files across the show and gain an even greater understanding of everything that Aggravation entails beyond my traditional beef and grain backgrounds. And of course, like all of us, help to contribute to the show to make sure it's a success for years to come. So I appreciate your time today as well as your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey. Next, we'll have a speaker that's with us today, Levi Jackson. Yes?
Hello, I'm Levi Jackson. I don't have anything prepared. I usually just kind of shoot from the hip. So my first Aggravation was 73, and I've been to every one since. It says in the book there I'm a 34-year volunteer. And during that time volunteering, I've been very active in the volunteer role. Before I was a director, I had chaired the Beef Supreme. I've been also chaired the junior show, Junior Extreme, and been very involved in a lot of ways as much as possible with Aggravation. You know, I thought about it. I was talking with a young fella just last week. He brought up some bulls for me to work on the feet, trimming some feet on them, and we got talking about Aggravation, and it kind of struck me then My reason for doing what I do and spending as much time as I do with Aggravation is I look back at 50 years now and all the people that have come before, the ones who started it, the ones who have carried it on, the ones who brought it through some really tough financial times, and now to where things are quite successful, that Aggravation is very recognizable as a tremendous entity all on its own, and the value and the worth that it has. My time and my effort is just to be a part of keeping that same thing going. I don't have any visions. I am not interested in being vice president nor president. That's not the way I'm at. I'm not made that way. I like doing what I do. And if I can be a good director and be that for another few years, that would be good for me. And I would feel that I've given back to something that has been a big part of my life for a very, very long time. So those are the reasons why I've been involved. I waited for quite a while to get involved so that I could donate and give up that time to do that. And that's how it's still working for me today. So if I've done a good enough job and you folks would like me to hang around for another year or two, that'd be great. I'd sure appreciate it and do everything that I can to keep things moving forward and look after business and just continue to make it an absolutely wonderful show. Thanks.
Thanks, Levi. Next up, also with us today, Marty Cradleville.
I'm not quite as good as some of these others, so I had to write stuff down. My name is Marty Cradleville. I'm from Milton, Saskatchewan. I've been a director here for 6 years. In that time, I was lucky enough to work on different files. Started with the livestock, and I've been working on the equine and the rodeo files since then. And I was also lucky enough to spend 1 year on the executive. Before that, I volunteered at Aggravation with the Livestock Traceability Project, and that's still going on today, and we're still working with that. I have enjoyed my time on the board and enjoyed meeting the different people that I have worked with on the committees, and I hope that you will vote for me to stay on the board so I can keep spending time with those committees and hopefully working towards a common goal here at Aggravation, and it's the best goal ever is to make Aggravation the best show in the world. I don't make really long speeches, but I would like it to be in the papers that I do not own pink or blue shoelaces. And thank you very much.
No, Marty, you don't own pink or blue shoelaces, but you buy glasses with 2 lenses in them. Thank you, Marty. I told you I was going to get you. Our next speaker is not here, not with us today, but he pre-recorded his speech. Garth Newell.
Good afternoon. My name is Garth Newell. I'm from Carlisle, Saskatchewan, down in the southeast corner of the province. I'm looking to be elected to the board of directors for a second term here this year. I have a wife and 4 kids, all of which have been in part of 4-H. We raise livestock cattle that are purebred plus commercially on the farm here. My father was a veterinarian here in Carlisle for over 25 years which basically got me started in the livestock industry. I was the chairperson for the 4-H show at Aggravation last year and the Prospect Steer and Heifer show and sale last year. Looking to possibly be re-elected to the board of directors for a second term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Garth. Our next speaker is with us today, Allie Pike.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Allie Pike. I've just completed my second term here on the board at Aggravation, but I've been a volunteer since 2013 when my husband and I moved here to Saskatchewan. In my regular day job, I work at the Public Health Agency of Canada doing parliamentary relations. What started as something more of a curiosity and something to do has quickly turned into something that I love and I'm passionate about. And I think it's been said a couple times here today. It's certainly been said over the years, but it truly does get in your blood, and it's sort of cliche to say, but it's 100% true. It's something that I've learned to know that I want my children to know about agriculture and where their food comes from, and Aggravation in general. I truly believe, being a city kid myself, that we need to connect the urban and the rural. CWA obviously hasn't been a part of my life for as long as probably the majority of people in this room, but I think honestly that is a testament to the show and how it can sort of rope people in, and it's a huge possibility for us to connect those people and connect them to agriculture and educate them about what we do, where your food comes from. And I think it's a huge section that we can grow and grow substantially. Since my time on the board, I've been the chair of the Food Pavilion, and in the last couple of years, I've been the chair of the Education Committee, as well as I sit on the Audit Committee. Both files, the Education and Food Pavilion, obviously have had some challenges over the last couple of years, but I think we really did do some innovative things. Chris alluded to them in his remarks earlier, but with education, we had to pivot and go completely virtual. Last year, we did some live Q&As with the help of our friends back there at Halter Media, and I think it was really impressive that we reached about 8,000 kids. Like, nobody was on the ground, but everybody was really excited to participate, and I'm super excited that we're going to continue that. My family and I will be moving to Ontario shortly for a couple of reasons, but honestly, I think that allows Aggravation to grow even more and have an ambassador sort of on the east side of, or east-ish part of the country, and help expand knowledge to Ontario and Quebec and everywhere else, especially with our new virtual programming. I would love to be a part of Aggravation still. I feel like I'm not done contributing. There's lots of awesome ideas that are cooking in there, and we just need to implement them. So I'm committed to this show, and I would love your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Our next speaker is also with us, Carol Poole. I think she's the lady that dresses Marty. I don't know about these shoes, Carol. I've been telling you.
Are you looking at my
No, no.
You guys can't even see me. Good afternoon. I'm Carol Poole, and some of you might know me as the Alpaca Lady. I've been on the Aggravation board for 2 years, and previously was a barn boss in 2018 and 2019. I don't know what's so magical about this place, but it just becomes something you want to be part of, and I love it. I live on an acreage north of Pilot Butte where I work for Ritchie Brothers. But my true passion for the last 26 years has been raising purebred alpacas and then selling them all over the world. Prior to living in Pilot Butte, I lived in Edam, where we operated a large earth-moving company in the oil and gas sector. While being on the board, I learned that Aggravation is an extremely complex business, one that needs a balanced financial sheet while staying true to our mission statement. I hope to continue to bring to the board my strong business background, my ability to execute a plan, and my connection to the volunteers and people that touch this show. Thank you so much for your consideration, and I ask for your vote.
Thanks, Carol. And let me rephrase that, not dress Marty, pick Marty's clothes and shoes out. Our seventh candidate is not with us today, Mike Sidorik.
Hello, I am Mike Sidorik. I'm extremely honored to allow my name to stand for the nomination for the Board of Directors of the Canadian Western Aggravation. I have had a lifelong passion to support the growth of the agriculture industry. I have always been excited to see one of Canada's premier agriculture events take place in Saskatchewan. Seeing Aggravation continue to recognize and support our livestock industry, along with showcasing many other facets of the agricultural and cultural sectors together under one roof is an amazing accomplishment that Aggravation continues to excel at. I would be proud to sit on this board and to see its continued growth by supporting it with my many years of experience. First and foremost, I do apologize for not being in attendance at this year's AGM, but I am in week 5 of a full knee replacement and travel to Regina was not recommended. I do agree with and understand the importance of board involvement at Aggravation. Even though I'm allowing my name to stand, I want the board and members to know that if I am elected, I will attend the planning and development meetings for this year's Aggravation. But I do have a conflict this year during the show. I am committed to attend my daughter's convocation at the University of New Zealand, where she will graduate as a doctor in the chiropractic field. A bit about my history and accomplishments. For 39 plus years, I worked with the Lloydminster Agricultural Exhibition Association. I started out as a casual summer worker from the age of 12 to 16. Then in the fall of 1981, after a short stint of working in the oil field, I went back to work for the Exhibition Association. My plan was to work there for only a few more months and then go back to the oil patch. But I never left until my retirement in 2020. When I started back, I was on the maintenance crew, then in 86 was promoted to facilities manager, and 89 promoted to general manager. In 1991, I married my wife, Kelly Wobesser, and had 3 children, Tess, Leah, and Carter. I worked alongside our 24-member board and respective 54 committees with a team of 6 department managers, upwards of 50 full-time employees, and 100 part-time casual staff, and 400 dedicated volunteers. We all worked together to develop more than 100 days of signature agriculture events, which included Stockade Roundup, Aggravisions, conference and trade shows, stock dog trials, Pride of the Prairies bull sale, many 4-H activities, including 4-H Expo, 4-H grooming, and 4-H judging clinics, many equine programs for the light and draft horse industries, ag education and safety days, PBR and rodeo events, CPCA chuck wagon finals, plus several major trade shows, concerts, conferences, seminars, and conventions. We worked with groups and organizations touring and supporting international delegations. I have been involved in civic committees and community committees, as well as service clubs. These are some of my many experiences and accomplishments that I believe can be an asset for the board of the Aggravation. I, again, would be honored to serve this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Before we do vote on our directors, I would like someone to make a motion to approve that Myers, Norris, Penny become our ballot counters. Bill Gray, seconder. Levi Jackson. All in favor? Oh, wait a minute for Melissa. Yeah, I was just thinking that. I looked at, can we get the names? Perfect. The motion is carried. We will now have the vote for the election of directors. Remember, you must select 6 names on the ballot to submit your vote. Please open the link in your email and make your selections now. We are encouraging you all to vote. Once you've done your voting, hold up your hand and some of the staff will come around and collect your ballots. You girls need my hat? Have all the ballots been picked up? Melissa, turn your card around, please. There's another one over here in this corner. All right, Christy has gone out to count the ballots. Melissa, are you done voting online? Okay. Okay. We'll just wait a few minutes and Christy will come back with our 6 directors for the next year. Okay, results. In no particular order. On our board for another 2-year term are Kelsey, Levi, Marty, Garth, Allie, and Carol. So there, thank you very much to your new directors, and thank you for Mike for putting your name forward. That is awesome. That is our new board of directors for a 2-year term. Just going to ask for it. Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that motion to destroy the ballots? Curtis Kahinka, all in favor? Melissa, do we have to wait for that one? Okay, I think while we're waiting for that, actually, we can move on. Is there any questions from the floor? Anything, questions that you want to ask me or Chris while he's here? If no, we're certainly ready to answer some questions if there is any from the floor.
How many people joined us online? Both. So the answer was 20 voting online, so that was pretty good. Thank you.
There's no questions in the email box. The motion to destroy the ballots has been carried. Now, I would like to ask for a motion to ratify the actions of the board in 2021. Thank you, Helgi. Do we have a seconder? Stuart Stone, thank you. All in favor? Melissa, turn your card around. Carried. Okay, we're nearing the end of the program. It says next in the remarks that Corey made for me, it says President's closing remarks. I think you heard enough of me at the beginning. I don't have any more shoe stories. I don't have any more stories about Marty and his eye patch by any means. So I think from there, I just want to say thank you for my term and allowing me to be your president for the last 3 years. There's been absolutely nothing about it that I didn't like. It was an honor and a privilege. It's been an honor to move into the next part of it as well, if they'll have me, and that's the Past President's Club. There's very distinguished gentlemen and women in that club, and I'm just proud as hell to be a part of it. I think that's really all I got to say. So at this time, I'm going to ask for an adjournment. Courtney, thank you, Courtney. Moving on, we're not quite done. Don't everybody get up and take off. As you know, the scholarship has become has its own identity now and its own board of directors, etc., and chairperson. So I'm going to ask Kim Hextall to come up, and we'll have the scholarship AGM.
Well, I'm taller than I'm not going to take up as much time as that AGM for the board took. We're relatively a new organization, but we do have some processes that we need to get through. So I'd like to welcome you to the inaugural annual general meeting for the Canadian Western Aggravation Scholarship Fund. And as your chair, we'll move right into our agenda that we have in front of you, and I ask for an approval of the agenda. Thank you, Stephen. Seconder. Thank you, Carol. All in favor? Opposed? And Melissa. Now, I won't be as quick at catching on maybe to this role of let's include all of these people that are sitting at home, but I really appreciate Halter Media here to help facilitate us having this process available to us because you know, when we were sitting in that board meeting yesterday and we knew that we were going to have a meeting today and be fighting weather, and of course, we're all kind of wondering, okay, this is great, we're going to have this hybrid meeting, but all of us in the back of our mind, I think we're thinking, you know, how's this going to go? And it certainly proved to be moving along very well. So Melissa says the motion is carried. So my message, as Chris Lane alluded to earlier, when we moved forward with the purchase of a 71 GMC truck and the idea of raffling it with the proceeds going to the scholarship committee, that was going to be great. But we found as we went to SLGA and wanted to have a lottery license that we weren't able to do that within our existing structure. And as a result, we needed to form a separate board, and it's much like foundations that are pretty common in agriculture. So we proceeded with that. The board could not be the same board or made up of the same people that sit at the Aggravation board. So as a result, we made one position for the sitting vice chair or vice president of Aggravation, plus 4 additional board members. And I would like to thank those 4 people, and I would like to introduce them. Candace Bai is here with us today. Candace, can you give a wave? Bill Gray, Mark Mulatz, and I think maybe Mark had to leave, but he was here for a fair portion of our other AGM. And we also have Todd Andrews, who is online. So those 4 people, along with myself, made up the board, and we went through the process of figuring out what we needed to do. We've got our own constitution. We have some policies, some bylaws. Bill, our parliamentarian today, kept us in line and saw that we got the I's dotted and the T's crossed, and this will move forward. So with that, these people will serve for another 1-year term, at which time next year at the AGM, you will be electing 2 people for a 2-year term and 2 directors for a 1-year term. And the membership for the scholarship fund will be the same as the membership for CWA. And in the future, this coming year, I want you to watch for the upcoming raffle. It's going to be a John Deere zero-turn lawnmower with a 54-inch deck. Apparently, Chris Lane is quite happy that he can buy a ticket this year. And there will also be 2 other prizes. We have a smoker, Pit Boss smoker, and also a Milwaukee tool set. So there's a real assortment of tools in that set and should appeal to a large audience. So with that, I would like to move on to Chris's CEO report.
Hi again, folks. I'll even be quicker than Kim here. I just, it's really important, I think, to understand a couple things about the scholarship fund. And one is you see it every year at the show. The work that fund does and the people who sit on that committee, now board, it matters. When you see how much it matters to the kids that receive the awards and bursaries, I think it is the most pure thing about the nonprofit space in agriculture. So it does important work, and we realized that unless we found a structure that allowed the scholarship fund to regenerate its own funds, is that we probably had a we had a limited lifespan left in it. So really, it was the will of the board and the will of the people who sit on the new board to make sure that from a business case, the scholarship fund was able to remain viable and sustainable. And so you'll see in your annual report here that the scholarship fund outperformed Canadian Western Agribition this year. It managed to have a profit of about $2,000 while we lost $321,000. So I have to give a whole ton of credit to the board and honestly to Melissa and Corey from the staff who support that board in just about every sense of the word. It is no small feat to spin off a brand new nonprofit corporation and apply for and receive an SLG, a lottery license, in a matter of months. And that's exactly what that group did. So from a CEO's perspective, it's been a fantastic organization, and I really look forward to seeing what the organization can do and how it can continue to help kids in agriculture in this province in the years ahead. So thank you, everybody, and congratulations.
So at this time, we'll move into the financial report, and Christy DiPaola will come up here and give us our auditor's report.
Good afternoon again. Second auditor's report we'll go through is the scholarship fund. Exact same structure as what you saw in the Aggravation financial statements. We're engaged to provide an opinion as to the fair presentation of the financial statements, and our audit report does report a clean or unmodified or unqualified audit opinion. The statements do present fairly in all material respects. Your statement of financial position, being the first year of operations as its own legal separate entity, you only have that 2022 column. Coming into next year, in your 2023 year, you will have those comparative figures going forward. No level of complexity here. Your assets are made of cash, and then you've got kind of that fund, ending fund balance. So that's the accumulation of reserves that Aggravation has accumulated since inception of the scholarship fund that was transferred over into the scholarship fund during the year. Your statement of operations revenue is largely made up of the raffle sales during the year. And then offsetting some of those revenues, you've got the truck purchase of about $28,000 on your expense side, and then you've got your regular operating expenses that you would see recurring from year to year with the scholarship fund. And then, of course, your $8,000 in scholarships that were paid out during the year. Quick highlight of the scholarship fund for you guys. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the 2021-22 scholarship financials. Thank you, Levi. Seconder? Kelly Howe. All in favor? Opposed? And Melissa. So I'd really like to thank the directors that stepped up to take part in this scholarship fund. They all had a connection to Aggravation in some way, but it was really nice to have them, come to the table in a new position and help us out and get this off the ground. And we have many years left in the scholarship. I think if we continue to grow it, to date there's been over $200,000 that has been paid out from the CWA scholarship. And now I don't have my papers in front of me, so I don't have the exact number on the two awards, but the Barry Andrew Award and the Bill Farley Award have also paid out, I believe, close to $20,000 to students. Our motion is carried. I would like to ask for someone to make a motion to appoint the auditor, or I will do that myself if I can have a seconder. Myers Norris Penny for the second year. Thank you, Curtis. All in favor? Opposed? And I would, as we have more people in the room, it's so tempting to call that carried, but I'll wait for Melissa. Carried. Thank you. Are there any resolutions from the floor? Seeing none, are there any questions from the floor? Pretty quiet room. I would like a motion to ratify the actions of the 21-22 Scholarship Fund Board of Directors. Thank you, Marty. Seconder? Michael? Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? And we'll wait for our online. So as we do that, in closing, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be a part of getting this Scholarship Fund Board up and running. It's something we didn't really expect to see coming, but as we move forward, it helped that there had been a little bit of groundwork done through the Aggravation office when we purchased that truck and started to look at having this raffle. And so that date when we started that process and when Corey started contacting SLGA was certainly to our advantage, as opposed to waiting for us to be completely formed before we could start to ask for that. Okay, motion is carried. At this time, I would like to adjourn the first Scholarship Fund meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. The first part of the program. Okay. Are you making that motion, Bill? Thank you. You need a seconder for motion? No? Okay. To adjourn it, right. Perfect. All right. The first half of the, yes. All in favor? It's not, this isn't my department. I might make that committee next year, but I'm good this year. It's not mine. Are they voting online, Melissa? For that or not? For the adjournment of the AGM. Perfect. Okay, first half of the program's over. The directors for the new directors that were elected today and the directors that have a one-year term, we're going to have a post-AGM meeting just across the hall over here to elect a new president, a new vice president, and 3 members at large. We're going to do that immediately now. For you that are here that aren't going to attend that meeting, please stay and have some more refreshments. We will be back with your new executive quick as I can get it done. Don't go away, and once that's done, then we'll move over to the big room and we'll have our volunteer appreciation night.